this guy on TikTok said to do this and this for my short head. Fuck you, dude. Bro, my trap's looking crazy. What the fuck? What the fuck?
Yeah, buddy. Lightweight, baby!
What's up, guys? I'm Josh and I lift things, and I'm here to talk about biceps. Can you isolate the two heads? Too long didn't watch? We don't know. Maybe, probably not, probably can't. And even if you can, it does not matter. So this video will be very similar to my lower chest video, which if you haven't watched, click the button in the top right hand corner of your screen to go check it out. In that video, essentially I tried to prove anatomically that the lower chest does not exist, and that focusing your training on it, trying to improve it specifically, is probably not going to work. Like that video, today I'm going to be explaining some very basic anatomy and biomechanics, but unlike that video, I'm not going to try to disprove the existence of the two heads of the bicep. I mean, look at it. It exists. Mine doesn't, but you get the point. The bicep is actually a very interesting muscle, as is the rest of the upper arm musculature. The bicep, or more accurately, the biceps brachii, which literally means two-headed muscle of the arm, primarily functions as an elbow flexor. It also helps in supination of the forearm and shoulder flexion. This is elbow flexion, like in a curl, and this is forearm supination. You can remember this by thinking if someone was to pour a bowl of soup into your hands, you would make a bowl with your palms facing up. Supination. Side note, this is exactly why you would perform a reverse curl with your hands pronated in order to take some tension off of the biceps and instead focus it more on the brachioradialis, which happens to be the largest muscle in the forearm and a very powerful elbow flexor in its own right. This would be shoulder flexion. Flexion. This is kind of confusing. A lot of people would think this would be extension because people think of the term extending and you're extending away. Shoulder extension is going behind you like that. There's a bit more to the bicep, but don't worry, we will get there. This means that the bicep actually works on three different joints. The proximal radial ulnar joint in the forearm for supination, the humeral ulnar joint of the elbow for elbow flexion, and the glenohumeral joint for shoulder flexion. The other muscles in the upper arm consist of the brachialis and the coracobrachialis. The coracobrachialis isn't really that important for our discussion here. The brachialis, on the other hand, in absence of supination, so especially like a neutral grip, is the strongest elbow flexor. This is why you will see people doing stuff like hammer or pinwheel curls. You cannot see the brachialis. It lies underneath the biceps brachii, but making your brachialis grow will actually push the biceps out further. To get back to the biceps, as the name would imply, it has two heads, a long head and a short head. Bicep, bicycle, bicentennial. That last one's probably not a great example. If you want the anatomy soy boy terms, the long head is actually known as the caput longum. Probably mispronouncing that. The short head is the caput breve. Breve, brief, short head. The long head runs laterally, meaning it's on the outside parts of your body, or out here, while the short head runs more medially, inside, right here. You can remember this difference because the long head with an L runs laterally with an L. Just a decent little mnemonic to help you remember it. The short head originates from the apex of the coracoid process of the scapula. That means a whole lot of shit that you don't have to worry about, so just move on. While the long head originates from the supraglenoid tubercle of the scapula. Yes, you may not realize this, but your biceps literally start in your scapula. Is this fun? Now, here's where things get a little bit confusing. You may think, well, Josh, they have different originations. They are different things. You could focus on them. Let's not be so quick. These two heads come together to form one congruent muscle belly, and they end up sharing the same insertion point at the radial tuberosity. Now, there is some evidence that some fibers remain by themselves or somewhat isolated throughout this congruent muscle belly, but for the most part, it is one muscle belly. Now, both heads, before they converge and after converging, have the same nerve and arterial supply, specifically by the musculocutaneous nerves C5 through C7 and the brachial artery. What this essentially means is you can't control one or the other head. Just to dispel any myth that you can 100% isolate each one. Some people do genuinely believe that. I know it sucks that I have to say it, but some people think you can 100% isolate one or the other. Let's just accept that that is impossible. So the question remains is, can you activate one more than the other through different types of posture or training? Maybe by using some specific form or specific exercise. Bro, my trap's looking crazy. What the fuck? What the fuck? You hear this stuff all the time. Oh, the preacher curl, that'll grow your peak, which will then often be followed by, it hits the long head more because reasons, and the long head's what gives you a bigger peak. Or you'll hear people say, use a wide grip to hit the long head because long head helps shoulder abduction, but only in external rotation, and then use a narrow to hit your short head. Does any of this have any validity? Probably not. Here is a wonderful review, actions of the bicep brachii at the shoulder. This is where a lot of people have gotten the idea about how much the long head is actually used during shoulder adduction, which essentially means being further away from the midline. Essentially, what they do is they load up the BBLH, the biceps brachii long head, on cadavers, and then they show significant alterations in the muscle's action in the shoulder. They subject it to so many newtons of force when compared to unloaded specimens, and it produced significant decreases in glenohumeral range of motion and the amount of displacement during translations. These guys showed that subjecting some cadavers to some more force via the long head significantly decreased translation in anterior, inferior, and superior directions. Warner et al. Had patients with confirmed loss of the proximal attachment of the long head tendon move through a wide range of humeral abduction. The long head tendon served as a humeral head stabilizer during abduction in the scapular plane. In contrast, in 2001 was reported a lack of electrical activity in the long head during isolated shoulder movements when the elbow and forearm were controlled. Speculation was the long head activity at the proximal attachment was due to a passive role of the tendon or tension brought about through elbow or forearm activity. However, these guys reported when the forearm and elbow were immobilized, a load applied to the distal humerus increased long head activity as recorded through electromyography. Hopefully you guys watched my last video on some of the potential pitfalls of EMG data. These authors concluded the muscle does play a role in glenohumeral motion. An interesting study on baseball players, they essentially concluded that the biceps brachii may help the shoulder resist torsional forces, which reduces the stress placed on the inferior glenohumeral ligament. These findings show that the BB contracts during a wide range of glenohumeral movement, but do not provide evidence that the contribution is significant. In addition, these results do not offer information about how various joint positions may affect BB moments. Now, more important for us, a few investigators have explicitly explored how joint angles affect the BB torque production or activation levels. They measured long head activity with fine wire electrodes while subjects performed a variety of shoulder movements under selected conditions. Trials alternated between weighted and unweighted, fast and slow, and with elbow and wrist externally stabilized. Specifically, the subjects performed fast and slow flexion, scapular abduction, internal and external rotation, all in weighted and unweighted conditions. Their results showed little activity in the long head in any of the tested movements. The activity that was noted occurred early in the flexion motion, that is in the first 30 degrees of movement, and then when performing a fast flexion movement with 5 pounds of resistance. Furthermore, they reported that this low-level biceps activity did not change with various elbow and forearm positions, and it was almost always accompanied by substantial activity of the brachialis. These authors concluded that the long head is not active in isolated shoulder movement when the angle of the elbow and forearm are controlled. Basically, what a lot of this can maybe be summed up as, and keep in mind I'm an idiot, is that the tendon has a lot of stuff to do with shoulder stability, but specifically for the long head, it may not have much to do with anything at all involving the shoulder, at least in regards to measurable EMG differences that would maybe then say that you could get increased hypertrophy by doing something. The only thing that seems to be fully agreed on is that shoulder flexion does activate the biceps, specifically the long head, which could be assumed based on the anatomy that I went over earlier of where it originates on the scapula. Here's another study, a biomechanical study of the effect of long head of biceps tenotomy on supraspinatus load and humeral head position during shoulder abduction. Essentially, you can read from the results here, the differences were not significant. The long head has no critical role with initial abduction of the arm. Furthermore, long head does not appear to increase loads required for the supraspinatus muscle/tendon complex to perform the same action of abduction. Now here is an image from Boak, Batrans, and Buskey's 2000. So here we have percentage of EMG activation compared to barbell curls with a shoulder wide grip. We can see that a wide grip, shoulder width plus 20 centimeters, had very marginally more total activation of the entire bicep, not just the long head or the short head, the entire thing. And that narrow grip, 10 centimeters between hands, caused this much of a drop off in total bicep activation. so you probably shouldn't be trying to train your short head with using a super narrow grip. Another study, differences in electromyographic activity of biceps brachii and the brachioradialis while performing 3 variants of curl. Here it's very interesting. They concluded that the easy barbell curl was the most effective variant considering the overall EMG activity of the biceps brachii and the brachialis. On the other hand, the dumbbell variant was found to be less effective, while the barbell variant could be placed in an intermediate position but with an activation closer to the easy than the dumbbell. Now that's very interesting. Most people when they use the easy bar are not in complete supination, which as we talked about is one of the main functions of the bicep. So as you see, sometimes basic biomechanics and what we think would be accurate and then what EMG datas prove or try to prove, even though again they have tons of pitfalls, do not always line up. It is not a clear-cut answer. Another study, effect of the shoulder position on the biceps brachii EMG in different dumbbell curls. And the conclusion here, for the dumbbell preacher curl cycle, the activation of the long head was maximal only for elbow joint angles closer to full extension, and the elbow joint range of motion was shorter. The incline dumbbell curl and the dumbbell biceps curl result in a considerable neuromuscular effort throughout the whole range of motion, and thus may be preferable for the improvement of biceps brachii force in training programs. Keep in mind with those past studies that did reference EMG data on the long head, they did not compare it to EMG data of the short head. Now this could be for a number of reasons, but probably mostly having to do with the fact that you can't really isolate the two or get an electrode that won't pick up some data from one or the other during a contraction, as once again they become one single muscle belly. Not a single study, to my knowledge, I would love to be proven wrong here, has shown an actual difference or comparing the long head to the short head activation throughout movements. Hell, it's even still argued if the long head actually does act more during abduction or external rotation. Not to mention, even if you can actually isolate the long head or the short head before it becomes one congruent muscle belly, it's mostly a tendinous structure before it even reaches that belly. There is not any regional hypertrophy that's going to be happening there in the first place. It's just silly at best and impossible at worst. I genuinely think that some of these ideas only come from people. There's 2 camps they can be from. From super elite bodybuilders that, let's be honest, have the fucking genetics and the assistance that they would grow just fucking sitting around jerking off all day, or it's people who took like one anatomy and physiology class and do not at all understand any type of nuance or complexity or like gray area to things, who just want to make a hard stance in order to get clicks on Instagram and TikTok. Like most of these guys will also probably make a video about how carbs are bad for you or some shit. Here's a fun fact. Did you know that about 10% of people have 3 bicep heads or more? They have found up to 7 heads on one bicep, a hepta brachii. So why aren't you training your potential 5th bicep head? Fun fact, having more than 2 bicep heads is much more prevalent in women than men. So, women, I've seen your booty buster, clamshell, banded, hip abduction workouts. When are you going to train your 7th bicep head? It really just pisses me off because you have these trainers that look great, and rather than telling you, hey man, it's going to take years of hard training, it's going to take years of hard dieting, it's going to take years of having proper supplementation and recovery protocols, and even in the most part, it's going to take anabolic steroids to look like me. They can't sell you that. That is not something that invigorates someone or gets clicks or anything. What they need is a video of them doing a stupid curl variation, and then they highlight the outer portion in red and they say, this is how I built my arm. This one simple exercise you aren't doing. That's what get clicks. None of this nuance, none of this bullshit that I put out that now I sound salty that I'm not getting clicks. I mean, a little bit. But for the most part, I just want to be accurate. And the most accurate answer we can give you is you probably can't isolate the heads. And if you can, it probably does not matter. That is as accurate as I can be without lying. Anything more would be me talking out my ass, hypothesizing, and doing a whole lot of shit we shouldn't do if you claim that you are a science-based YouTube fitness content creator. It pisses me off so much because then I have kids messaging me, oh, this guy on TikTok. 1 second. Oh, this guy on TikTok said to do this and this for my short head. Fuck you, dude. It really, really grinds my gears. And these people take a modicum of truth and then expand it into all of this bullshit. So then you just see kids doing stupid fucking exercises for stupid fucking reasons. If you like really wide grip curls, do wide grip curls. I am not going to be pissed or insulted or anything. If you start telling other people to do that because it will grow a long head, you do not understand anatomy, physiology, biomechanics, kinesiology, any ology you can think of, you are inept at. You just know once the guy who posts this dumb shit on TikTok, right before the video ends, is gonna say, by the way, use my code for 90% off your snake oil. Oh my god. I'll give myself an aneurysm. So, rant done. Can you isolate your bicep heads? Probably not. And even if you could, it wouldn't really matter. So, what exercises should you perform for your biceps? Or if you don't want to use EMG data or shady influencer advice on exercise selection, how do you choose exercises? Well, you follow the same guidelines that hold true for every single muscle group. Listen to good biomechanics. For the biceps, that means elbow flexion, that means supination, and that means some shoulder flexion. If at the bottom of the curl you raise your shoulders out a little bit, that's enough elbow flexion. Maybe some neutral grip stuff to try to really focus on the brachialis. Maybe some reverse grip stuff to try to really focus on the brachioradialis. You can even do like a mechanical drop set to where you do just regular supinated curls, whatever you prefer. I don't care if it's preacher curl or incline dumbbell or easy bar or whatever. And then when you gas out on that, you can eventually drop to neutral grip. They'll take a lot of tension off the biceps and you'll be able to hammer your brachialis more. And then after that, you can switch to reverse grip, which will take a lot of tension even more so off the biceps. Your brachialis will still be a little active, but your brachioradialis will have much more activity and be able to take over more weight in that position. Use an implement that feels good on you, specifically your joints and soft tissue. Sure, barbell curls in some studies may have better activation for reasons, but if they hurt your wrists more than a dumbbell curl or an easy bar curl, they are not worth fucking doing. This is a marathon, not a sprint. Use an implement that matches your goals. Again, maybe easy bar has better fucking activation. But if you have a muscle imbalance, it's not going to be that useful in fixing. So you got to use dumbbells or unilateral work. Perform a movement that offers a full range of motion. Usually. Partials have their place in training, but typically only in a stretched position. Perform a movement that's easiest to overload. Maybe you go to a tiny gym where the dumbbells only go up in 5-pound increments. Well, maybe you're not ready for a 5-pound jump. An easy bar would allow you to put micro plates on so you can increase in 1.25 pound increments. For these reasons, if you really want to optimize your biceps training, here is what I would recommend. Do some heavy pull-ups and rows. These will do wonders, and EMG studies have shown a hell of a lot of activation during pull-ups, chin-ups, rows of all varieties. For isolations, maybe do an incline dumbbell curl. As a super big stretch, they feel great, you can load them easily. Maybe you do some hammers or some pinwheels for your brachialis after the fact. And then if you ever want to do some forearm work, feel free for throwing some reverse curls along with your wrist flexion and your wrist extension, and they will blow up. And guys, that is the video. Pretty long one, pretty intense one, a lot of science, a lot of funny terms, a lot of Josh being mad. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you like this style of content, please do me a favor, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave me a comment down below. I respond to every single one of them, and tell me why I'm an idiot, what I forgot. Show me some research that I haven't seen yet. I am always happy to be wrong. Please prove me wrong. Please leave comments, interactions, algorithm, yada yada. Maybe even share to a buddy who tried to tell you to do some reverse handstand flip-flops to grow your long head. Ask him about his third head. I'm sure that won't get weird. If you really want to support me, you can follow all of these socials down below. They will be linked in the description. I post exclusive content there occasionally. So if you want to see that when it comes out, make sure to do that. If you have a more personal question for me, hit me up on Discord, hit up the subreddit, let me know. My community will hopefully be helpful. They are kind of assholes sometimes. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.